It's Saturday, the 21st of January. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and time for a long overdue California water update, Oroville update. How can we be both simultaneously in a disaster area for floods and in a drought at the same time? Let's check it out. We're going to give you a broad overview of the California entire hydrology and a short flight from Nevada County Airport down across the valley to Noss Field in the Bay Area and back. Just 3 months ago, in the map in the upper left here, much of California and the Central Valley was suffering from an exceptional drought, shown in dark brown, and the rest of the valley in extreme drought. Today, the drought map has been changed to severe drought in some locations and moderate drought throughout much of the rest of California. A series of over 20 atmospheric rivers or pineapple expresses, heavy rain events, has pummeled California this December and January, resulting in flooding throughout the state and the declaration of disaster areas throughout the state. But unfortunately, much of this water is coming, since it's coming all at once, we can't capture all of this water, and a lot of this water is going right out to sea. So that's how we can have both a flood and a drought going on at the same time. Some of our major water reservoirs are not quite filled up yet to the top of the conservancy level, or that level that they want to top off the reservoirs at during this time of year for flood control, as we're still trying to recover from years of drought. Two of our largest water storage reservoirs in our system, Lake Shasta and Lake Oroville, still have a ways to go before this blue line gets up to the red line. The red line is the top of the conservation level, where they want to maintain that level of that reservoir during flood season before they allow that reservoir to fill up completely at the end of the flood and rain season here in California. A lot of the smaller reservoirs have made it up to the top of the conservancy level, conservation level, yet our largest reservoirs still have a ways to go. Hopefully with the snowpack in the mountains, these reservoirs will top off this year, but it's not clear as to whether Shasta or Oroville will top off yet without additional precipitation. Now here's your Oroville update on Lakes Online. The current Oroville elevation, 795 feet. Oroville has come up over 150 or 160 feet from its low back towards the end of October. And this graph has just been shooting straight up. From right here around November 30th, boom, right up to current here. But if we look at 5 years worth of data, we can see that the reservoir still has quite a ways to go. Remember, full pool at Oroville is 900 feet. The flood conservation level is going to vary. The top of the conservation level is going to vary around 850 feet. Remember, the spillway is only somewhere between 820 and 850 feet before they can even begin using the new spillway at Oroville. So the water level is not even yet up to the spillway level at Oroville. And then as the snow melts, the reservoir will eventually be allowed to fill all the way up to 900 feet, which it has not seen since 2019. So at the major reservoirs, the outflow is very low out of most of those reservoirs who have not reached the top of the conservancy level, with the exception of Folsom Reservoir, located right here at 10,000 CFS. Folsom Reservoir is a relatively shallow reservoir. We'll take a look at that on our flyover, primarily for flood control. They have been having to release some water out of Folsom. The rest of the reservoirs are being allowed to fill up. Now let's take a closer look at Oroville. Here's about a month's worth of data at Oroville. Inflows are peaking out somewhere 27, 30,000, 34,000 CFS in, outflows just about 1,000 CFS. So allowing the reservoir to fill up very quickly. Folsom Reservoir is working as a flood control reservoir. Look at the inflows here. 1231 inflows, 106,000 cubic feet per second inflow. So that water pours into the reservoir and then it's allowed to be let out at only 20,000 CFS, mitigating the chance of flooding downstream. So where does all this water come from? How do these atmospheric rivers form? Well, it starts with the intertropical convergence zone, which I'm now very familiar with after flying the LA-Sydney route. We got to fly through this thing every time. That's where all the thunderstorms form, just a little bit north or south of the equator, depending on the season. There was an excellent graphic here on the Weather Channel explaining how this works. As the sun beats down on the equator and heats up that air rises, that forms these large tropical thunderstorms around the equator, and then as the earth spins, Coriolis effect, that gets the jet stream going, that creates high and low pressure areas, and sometimes this equatorial moisture gets caught up into the northern latitudes in the jet stream in the form of an atmospheric river, making a long skinny band of moisture that just shoots like a fire hose right at the coast of the United States, or the coast of Canada, as the case may be. 2 years ago, this fire hose was aimed up in the Pacific Northwest. This year, it's been aimed right here at California. As a result, we got this flooding, but we also got money in the bank in the High Sierra, snowpacks of 200 to almost 300% of average at this time. This snowpack is measured by a snow water equivalent, where surveyors go out there, stab the snow with these tubes, these sharp tubes here. They measure the depth of the snow, then they measure the weight of the tube with the snow in it minus the tear weight of the tube. They run it through a calculation down here. They record the data here, run it through a quick calculation here, and come up with a snow water equivalent. So typically 10 inches of snow would be about the equivalent of 1 inch of water. Well, some of this is Sierra cement, and it's got a much higher water content than that ratio. And so that's what these guys are measuring, the quality of the snowpack. So with the rain and snowfall shut off for now, it's dry weather for the next 7-day forecast. Is there enough snowpack in the High Sierra to fill up our major reservoirs like Oroville using the Feather River watershed here? And what about Shasta using this watershed up here by Mount Shasta? Here locally at the Blanco Lirio headquarters, this is 2 doors down from us. These storms have produced a lot of downed trees. This tree landed right on the neighbor's truck stored inside the shed here. The ground's saturated, the trees come down, or in this case, the tree's already got a problem from before and it split and came right down. And this is all due to the high winds associated with these storms. But flooding's not a problem for us up here in the hills. It has been a major problem along the coast range, coastal rivers, coastal towns. So let's jump in the Husky and do this little round trip flight down to Noss Field and back and show you how this water plays out flood control in the valley. We depart Nevada County Airport, Banner Mountain right here, global headquarters located right up here. And one of the first sunny days we've ever seen. What's that big orange thing in the sky? Some of our local reservoirs spilling over. You see the debris located up here. Get myself out of the way so you can see this. Some of the debris located up here from various fires upstream. And then water spilling over the spillway. This is a Combi reservoir. The color of this water is, well, a lot of it's caused by the runoff the poor water quality from the runoff from the fire areas. Now we're over the American River area of the proposed Auburn Dam that never happened. The dam was to be proposed right across through here. This would have created quite a bit of additional above water storage on the American River, but was shot down by environmentalists and public opinion years ago. There was a coffer dam here, a temporary dam, which failed by design during the floods many years ago, several decades ago. Now we're approaching Folsom Reservoir. This is the American River, all three forks of the American River feeding into Folsom Reservoir, which is a shallow reservoir, as we talked about earlier, and primarily for flood control of the city of Sacramento. So they're keeping this reservoir down at a conservative level to allow for the regulation of these floodwaters, as I showed earlier in the data. But what's interesting here at Folsom is the new spillway they've added right here. So in order to better manage these reservoirs, they've added a new lower spillway, lower than the original spillway, which was located right here on this concrete dam, which allows them to do just this. With the advance warning of these storms, they're able to quickly adjust the level of Folsom Reservoir to give you greater flood protection, rather than having to wait for the water level to rise up to the level of the old spillway and then dumping a whole bunch of water out all of a sudden. So as we saw in that data below or before, we had 100,000 CFS coming in. They were able to take that, absorb it, and then release it at a rate of only 20,000 CFS out, protecting levees, infrastructure, and the city downstream. There's Folsom Prison right there. You can start singing your own version of Folsom Prison Blues. There's a closer look at that new spillway in action. This is back on the 11th of January, right in between the storms, before the last couple of storms. Other reservoirs in the area are going to do additional improvements like this, including Bullard's Bar Reservoir here in Yuba County. They're going to add a second spillway. And this is in the works for Oroville in the long-range planning as well. Adding a second spillway. It's like adding a second engine to your airplane. It gives you greater control and redundancy in the event that you have a problem with the main spillway. You've got a backup plan. The spillway at Folsom spills into Lake Natoma downstream and works its way down to Nimbus Dam right here, where the fish hatchery is located right over here for the American River. So Nimbus Dam flows basically in conjunction with Folsom Dam to keep Lake Natoma at a constant, fairly full level. Now we're moving downstream on the American River closer to Sacramento. You can see some levee work being done right here. Here's the levee protecting the city of Sacramento from the floodwaters of the American River. Let me show you a detail about what they're doing, the millions of dollars they're doing to improve these levees downstream. So the American River watershed feeds into Folsom Reservoir here, which flows into Lake Natoma, past Nimbus Dam, into the American River, and the American River flows into the confluence of the Sacramento River right here at downtown Sacramento. And this whole area is protected by levees, along with this Yolo bypass flood area, which we're going to look at in a moment to relieve the pressure off of the Sacramento River. These levee systems have been around for, well, over 100 years, and is what makes, between the dams of these reservoirs and these levees, that's what makes Sacramento and much of the Central Valley habitable. And of course, it needs periodic maintenance. And here's a map of some of the current projects they're working on this levee system. So what they're doing with a lot of these levees is putting in a cutoff wall. Remember the secant cutoff wall put in the emergency spillway of Oroville during the Oroville updates? Well, it's the same thing but different here with the levees. They dig a deep, deep trench down into hard clay, and then they fill this cutoff wall with various substances to stop seepage and leakage from the river through the levee. Here's a cutaway view of the technical drawings. Here's one soil bentonite cutoff wall, typical cross section. Here's a cement bentonite cutoff wall cross section, a DMM cutoff wall. Not sure what that is. Here's a jet grout cutoff wall, typical cross section. So this is what they're doing to beef up these levees. So now we'll continue downstream on our tour in the Husky down the American River to the confluence of the Sacramento River here. And you can see the difference in color of the water as the American River feeds into the Sacramento River here on the right, and Discovery Park, a natural flood area during times of high water. Here in the distance you can see the Yolo bypass and the floodwater system working here in the middle of the valley, and off in the distance is Mount Diablo. So now we're heading across the Yolo bypass, and I just passed up the Sacramento Weir, this channel located right here. Let me see if I got a better picture of it. I don't. So as the water comes in from the American River and merges with the Sacramento River, there's then a diversion here called the Sacramento Deep Water Channel, which allows shipping into Sacramento. And then the rest of the Sacramento River continues off to the south. But right up here, just above the American River, is the Sacramento bypass, located right here. And it's simply a 100-year-old cement wall set at a certain elevation with a series of wood boards across it. And when they want to open this up and relieve some of this pressure on the Sacramento River, they can lift these boards and allow some of that Sacramento River to flood into the Yolo bypass, this whole area right here. There's several of these weirs, I think a total of 5 of them, and we'll look at the Fremont Weir on the way back. So this is what the Yolo bypass looks like when it's full of water. This is Interstate 80 and the railroad tracks crossing the inland sea, what used to be known as the inland sea before this was developed. This Central Valley would flood nearly the whole valley every heavy rain year, but now only through this system of levees are we able to live in the valley and use it for agriculture the way that we do. But an important part of this whole water plan, and a part that we're really just getting a grip on now, is we've got all this above ground water storage and all the issues with that. But what about below the ground water storage? These sort of floodplains help recharge the water table below the ground, and we are learning how to capture more of that water and reuse more of that water here for the future. And that might be the key to future development for California, is greater use of the groundwater, sustainable use of the groundwater system, how to recharge that water system by using these floodplains. Now approaching the San Francisco Bay Area, that's San Pablo Bay. Bay Bridge is going to be way off in the distance there. Lots and lots of water and some flooding issues down here. Here is Sonoma Valley Airport, just hanging on by a thread here, sticking out of the floodwaters of the Napa River. There's an old DC-3 parked right there, right on the edge of the floodwaters. An interesting view of the low tide heading out of San Pablo Bay, helping to drain this water out of here. Now on our way back, we're going to look at Lake Berryessa, the rest of the Sacramento Valley, and Lake Camp Far West, located right up about here. Here's a view of Lake Berryessa, where most of this forest has been burned in recent wildfires, millions of acres throughout the Mendocino National Forest. And here's a look at the dam and the glory hole for Lake Berryessa. So as you can see, the water level still is not even up yet to the spillway portion of Lake Berryessa, where the water just pours down this hole and down the creek to the valley. Got a close-up view of the C-17 doing touch and goes out of Travis, talking to Travis Approach. And then back over the Sutter Buttes, looking up towards Marysville, Yuba City area. Again, we see all this, the flooded rice fields, and we're going to take a closer look at the Fremont Weir, where the Sacramento River merges in with the Feather River coming out of Oroville Reservoir. So here's the Sacramento River coming in here, and then it's going to merge with the Feather River. Here it is. Here's the Sacramento River, and here's the Feather River over here. And right in this area is the Fremont Weir. And this is just a simple concrete wall over 100 years old. It's just set at a certain elevation, and as the water rises on the Sacramento River, it just pours over. There's no wood boards, there's no control of this weir. It just simply flows into the bypass right here, relieving the water pressure on the Sacramento River before it even merges with the Feather River and heads downstream towards Sacramento. Right in there is that Fremont Weir. So here's the Feather River coming out of Lake Oroville. Here's the Sacramento River twisting down from Shasta Reservoir, Lake Shasta. And right down in here is this Fremont Weir. And it's just a simple rock or concrete wall set at a certain elevation. And right here they've done a recent improvement to the Fremont Weir fish escape route, as fish, sturgeon, and that sort of thing out of the Sacramento get trapped in the bypass during winter months. They've now got an opportunity to escape back into the river system through this fish anti-entrapment system that they built here into the Fremont Weir. And it's working. They put cameras in there, and as the water recedes and starts flowing back towards the Sacramento River, the sturgeon and other species of fish are making it back into the Sacramento River. Here's a closer view of that Fremont Weir improvement project right there. So they can now remotely open and close these gates. Here they can see the sturgeon going through the project. So now we'll leave the Sacramento Feather River confluence and the Fremont Weir behind and head on up towards, well, past Beale Air Force Base, the flooded rice fields, and take a quick look here at Lake Campfire West off of the Bear River, and it's already filled up and flowing quite a bit over its spillway. And it looks to me like this spillway is concrete up here, but then just spills out on the hard rocks down below, kind of similar to what happened at Oroville when the spillway failed. In this case, they just let this spillway pour over the natural topography, and it looks like it's a small earth-filled dam here at the Lake Campfire West Reservoir. And this reservoir was down very, very low. It was just like a river before we got these rains. Again, a shallow reservoir, it fills up quickly. DWR has let me in on a couple of different briefings over these last couple of days, and this is where I'm learning more about recharging of the groundwater supply here in California and why this might be a major player for how we are able to continue to live in California in these drought conditions through the management of our groundwater. Of course, it's not without its political controversies and the farmers and everything else, but it's a very interesting subject. And that brings us back home safe and sound to the high and dry in the hangar here. We've got an exciting new project we're going to get started on here soon. Stand by for updates on that. I hope that gives you a better picture of the broad overview of the hydrology, the complicated hydrology here in California. Thanks so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that are making this channel possible and make upgrades to the airplane fleet like this Husky possible. A much better aircraft for getting around to doing these sort of reports than the mighty Luscombe. Thanks so much for your support. See you here. you.